Here is what you missed out on. Yeah, let's take a look.
Secretary and the leadership of the ministry, led by the Cabinet Secretary, give you warm greetings. He challenged all of us to ideate, to innovate, and make our education system resilient and sustainable. And we welcome you into this sphere of EdTech. As an education sector, we feel honored that you can be able to organize yourself, and the reports that are coming from this consortium, we are able to see them and they are really challenging us, and we are going to continue working together. Allow me to challenge ourselves. We challenge ourselves, and I said, how can we go beyond chalk and talk?
How do we help our young learners get the right, improve their education outcomes and skills for the jobs of today and tomorrow? And how do we build our country based on that?
How do we remove some of the barriers to collaboration that exist in our community? And this group of wonderful people helped us think through how to make that conversation happen. The agenda you'll see for the next 2 days is a representation of that. Let's celebrate all of our innovators. Please, let's celebrate together our amazing Global Spotlight winners. Let's congratulate them. Thank you.
How many of us are here today and weren't here yesterday? Right. It's just a few of us. The rest of us were here, so that's pretty much what you missed out on. And let me reiterate our social media handles that we are using today and the hashtags that we are using today as well. So the hashtags we're using today, Kenya EdTech Summit, Kenya EdTech Summit. That's the hashtag in case you want to post anything about the day 2 of this very event. And also you can use an alternative or another hashtag, which is EdTech254, in case you want to tweet anything about this EdTech Summit that we've had. So Kenya EdTech Summit and EdTech254. Please feel free to share some of the developments, some of the observations, and some of the wins that you think have come out of this summit, because I think there's so much knowledge that can be shared as well, and also to inform people about these events is very critical as well. So do take advantage of those and follow the Twitter handles or social handles that you need to follow regarding the event partners and sponsors. Those are the hashtags, like we said. So I'm just quickly going to mention the social handles. I think we'll start with EdTech East Africa. If we can go to the social handles as well. EdTech East Africa is the EdTech E-Africa that is on Twitter. And the EdTech Hub handle is at Global EdTech Hub, and Imaginable Futures is at Imaginable FUT. Acumen East Africa is at Acumen_EA, and the MasterCard Foundation is at MasterCard FDN. And you can also follow the subsidiary account as well, which is Young Africa Works, but the handle is Young Africa WKS. Please feel free to follow those handles. You'll be able to get more information about education technology entirely in the country as well. And you can share with us your social handles from your respective companies. We will follow those accounts as well and continue the conversation online. And so I would like to recognize one of our participants today, who is Miss Elizabeth Moeni Kimulu, OGW, and she's the Director, Social Sector Policy and Strategy Unit at the Executive Office of the President. Miss Elizabeth Moeni, it's so good to have you here today. Probably you could just stand and and wave if, all right, there she is. And I would also, if you don't mind, like for you to come and say something before I can now entirely start off with today's programming. So a round of applause for Ms. Mweni as she comes to address us and, and say hello to us as well.
Hamjambo. Good morning. I was not scheduled to speak, but I think it's always good to be ready to speak anytime. I'm very excited to be here. I followed the session yesterday online, and it's very exciting conversation and resonates with the work I do, and of course the work, the policy on education and digital economy. I personally work in a program called Generation Unlimited, which is multi-stakeholder partnership, public-private youth partnership to accelerate education training and employment by 2030, especially for the group 10 to 24 years. And one of the key, the two work streams that we have is connectivity and e-learning and remote skilling. So for me, this summit is very crucial because our approach is to really just initiate new solutions, but also accelerate and scale best practice. And I think through this session, we are able to really know what is the best practice out there and also know what new solutions are out there. And the unit I work at, called the Policy and Strategy Unit, collaborated with EdTech to do more of a qualitative study on digital learning. And as much as it's not being launched, it's good to mention that it highlighted quite a number of challenges, but also the technical team on that study proposed a framework for digital learning. So I think as we go along, it will be harmonized with the new policy direction of the government. And talking of that, I would like to highlight that we should all look at the youth charter of the incoming government or the new government, because it has a full section on digital economy. And I think if some of the strategies that are proposed there are implemented, it will make a great difference in the space. We are looking at a crisis, and I think when you have a crisis, you come up with solutions. So for Generation Unlimited, we say that it's good to turn that crisis to opportunities, and the opportunities are great in the EdTech space. So I'm very excited to be here. I don't want to talk a lot because I'm sure there are a lot of speakers with very interesting things, but I just wish everybody a good day today. And yeah, if you see me, we can chat if you want to know more about what we are doing. So please, if you want the charter, I can share it with somebody who can share with everybody, because it has interesting things. It recognizes the crisis, but proposes a lot of new things that, if implemented, it will make the difference that we want, because the goal, as we have in the Vision 2030, is for everybody to really just enjoy a high quality of life and for the country to develop. So if we implement, some of the strategies that we have, and I think every organization represented here has very great strategies and very good vision and goals. So if we achieve those, I'm sure we will achieve the vision. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I'm not hearing myself. Can you hear me? But you can see me. All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Mweni, for those remarks. And indeed, the goal of Vision 2030 is to ensure that every Kenyan citizen enjoys a high quality of life. And that does include a good education as well, supported by the EdTech ecosystem. So without further ado, allow me to now introduce Ms. Millicent Mwendwa, who is the co-founder and COO of EdTech East Africa, to come give us some feedback, from day one of our EdTech Summit that kicked off yesterday. A round of applause for her. And yesterday, she was right in the thick of things. Everything that you saw going very smoothly yesterday was pretty much partly her responsibility. So yeah, another round of applause for her once again.
Thank you, everyone. As she stipulated, I am the co-founder of EdTech East Africa and the COO. That being said, my goal is to move along the session, and we're quite behind, and that is my role. So we will quickly move through this next sessions pretty quickly so we can kind of kick off day two, starting off with the EdTech Collective Action Framework launch. So yesterday, as Joy has shared, we were using Slido to pick up a lot of feedback from the team as they were going through different participation. Don't worry, we will share a more comprehensive one. So here are just some of the key highlights from one of the Learning Out Loud sessions, which was sessions that were running in different rooms that were meant to be able to help people learn new things in different topics areas. So one of the feedback that we have here is for using technology to support teachers for professional development. You can see there where one has shared, I need to be more aware of the end user constraints while designing a product for the last mile learner and teacher. Next slide, please. For the town hall debate responses, this was one of the sessions that was really lively and interactive with the team. One of the questions that was raised here was, should learners be restricted to offline digital content for safety? It was definitely a hot topic. A lot of feedback was shared. Great questions. It was definitely a session where we could both agree and disagree, but at least we are all caring about the same things, which is teachers, learners, and the parents who are involved. So that is a no, great. So we will continue using Slido today to still collect a lot of insights. If you'll kindly go to the next slide. So please just make sure that
all of this information from us or amongst us is to encourage us as an EdTech network of different companies that we can always trust and share information to help others as well get more involved. Stephen, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good. I thought you were going to hold the mic and start interviewing me, pushing questions. Good morning. I hope you are well. I was there in the gallery and I was able to say some 3 things that we have been able to collaborate in, which were very exciting. And I've been told my time is constrained a bit. I want to go in the order that I wrote them, so that in case I'm cut off, at least I've started with the juiciest. We had a collaboration with Intel Kenya, which was called Intel Teach program. It is a program that was training teachers on 21st century skills. As you were called yesterday, we are migrants in technology. We are migrants in software, and migrants in programming, in everything. And the worst people who are migrants are actually teachers. So the teachers are the ones who are the biggest load when you want to achieve anything in any country. So in this collaboration, which happened between this center here, I was working at Semastea at that particular time, and Intel Kenya, which was, fortunately, the manager is here, was the manager that particular time. We had a very good system or a way of working towards ensuring that the teachers can be able to come and be on top of the game. We had a workbook and we had a 4 days training, and it was to demystify anything to deal with ICT, and the teachers were able to appreciate that ICT is not a competitor, but ICT is actually a tool for them to be able to achieve what they want. In fact, we used to pay them. And during that time, we would pay them to attend because it was a corporate social responsibility. I think Intel was giving back to society, and they had a target of 10 million teachers across the world. Here in Kenya, I was given 10,000 teachers. So I started by training my colleagues who are here. If you saw Kizito, if you had Lydia Muridhi and the others, we trained them to become master trainers, first of all. After becoming master trainers, we went in tours to each and every school or institution. And it was not restricted to any particular sector. We actually trained teachers in primary, in secondary, and in TTCs. And what was amazing about this training is that within 2 days, actually, not even 2 days, because I remember for Lenana, we went to Lenana High School. We asked who would want to be trained to know how to use technology to teach. And then, Lenana has around 60-something teachers. Only 20 accepted to be there. And then we started. It was very exciting. People were bubbling with energy. Everything was happening. We went for tea. The ones who had already tested this Intel Teach were communicating to the others. When we came back after tea, the hall was full. We are now being told now we also want to join this program. It was very exciting. And it had a transformational impact. In fact, inside here, I've already attested to some of the people that we trained, because I remember we went up to KICD, we went to the TTCs. It's not only just primary schools, even to institutions. And the transformative part of it was this. You'll find a teacher who had latent energy, teacher who had potential but was not showing it. All of a sudden, coming out with all those tenets of the 21st century, what is being kept now in the competencies in CBCs, we had already taught them. We taught them about collaboration, taught them about critical thinking, creativity. All those was being brought out in a very nice way. And we would slide in technology in a very nice way, in a tacit way. You would not even notice that you're going to do technology, because first of all, you discuss our fears. After discussing our fears, then we'll discuss our potentials. And then we'll discuss where we want to take our learners to. And then at that point, when you're discussing where you want to take your learners to, technology comes in briefly. And we would start with something very little, like, for example, using the internet. You'll want to say, in the internet, you can get these resources. And then they will see, so it's possible to get this. And then there's a way of refining the advanced search. And then they see the use of technology, and all of them by that time are already sold out. There are people who want to use technology and so on. For us to be able to reach 10,000 plus teachers, because we were given 10,000, but we were able to train around 12,000 teachers overall in Kenya in a span of around 3 years. It wasn't easy, because basically we mandated people from Semastea and a few that we trained at NI3C, where actually Francis is one of them. Francis Nganga, the one who was representing the PSCA, is one of the products of this Intel Teach program. So we were able to do this by also mandating other teachers from other places to become master trainers, but it was every time being controlled from this center, from Semastea. In fact, Semastea has contributed a lot towards demystifying ICT in the schools. But it is not just demystifying ICT in the schools. I had a music teacher. We took him through this Intel Teach program. By the time we were finishing, he had already produced songs using technology. And he remained in the school. Not that he left. He was producing songs, which initially had them just on his computer, didn't know what to do with them, and was able to produce. We had people who are very good managers, and they were able to be trained by being shown their creative energy, being shown the way they can collaborate and so on. And they changed jobs. By the way, many teachers at that time were able to switch jobs from being teachers. Some of them went to IEBC, some of them went to big companies and so on. And this is what we are saying. If only education technology can show that there is no limit in the teachers that we have in our schools, that is wonderful. That is the tip of what we did at Intel Teach, with the Intel Teach program. I don't know whether I can see your steps closer to me.
I'm sure you can see.
You want me to talk about VVOB also?
I'm sure we'll have time to talk about
Okay,
that.
sure. Thanks for the
Thank you
time.
so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
A round of applause for Stephen. I know when we say 2 minutes, sometimes we take it as 6 minutes. But thank you so much for that, Stephen, and also for sharing that information with us. If only we can show that EdTech is what we need, I think, and be able to decentralize it to reach to the far-reaching or hard-to-reach learners as well. That would actually be the thing that we need to do to make this a success. Let me invite now our co-founder at EdTech East Africa to now take us through a next step, because we are all about collaboration for the future, which is what Going Further Together is all about. So I'd now like to invite Jen to come take us through our next step. A round of applause for Jen, please.
Good morning again. Good morning again, everyone. Lovely to see you all back today, and thank you already for your contributions to making this room beautiful, for sharing your learnings about what makes collaboration possible. Today is going to be all about that. This session is going to lay the foundation for the rest of the day. So I'm going to take you on a little journey. I hope you'll follow with me, because it is a journey that's designed for you to pull apart, to say you've done the right thing or you haven't. I agree or I don't. And so this is about us, not about EdTech. This is about, as John called us yesterday, our family that's in this room. So please listen, but criticize and be ready to critique as we go through. So, we've talked about a lot yesterday. We heard in our sessions throughout the day, there are a lot of barriers that we need to overcome. And there are a lot of opportunities ahead of us. We know from all of the evidence that many sort of pieces of this puzzle have yet to be solved. So, how do we do that? How do we marshal the energy and potential of this community to do that? Next slide, please. We know that these are not simple problems. These are complex problems. And again, the reason why we've all come together is to figure out how do we plug into that to make solutions possible. As we said, 2 pieces of why we're here. The first is evidence. And again, we talked about evidence all day yesterday. Amazing organizations shared with you what they've been learning, and all of you have provided your insights into that picture as well. Today is about the movement piece of that. So how do we actually move us forward? And that's where we started. We said, okay, so let's practice what we preach, and let's start with the evidence around what makes collaboration possible. What do we know about how to collaborate effectively when the problems are not simple, when it requires multiple actors? What can the evidence tell us? So we said, next slide, please. What kind of collaboration is actually needed here? And when we looked at the evidence, there's a body of research that defines this in 2 ways. The first is around technical problems. These are problems that are very clearly defined, easy to understand. The answer is known, and one or a few organizations have the capacity to implement the solution. So this doesn't require an entire ecosystem of people to work together. It just sort of requires people who know how to do the thing that is the answer. And you move forward. On the other hand, we have these adaptive problems where the answer is not known. And even when it is, and even if it were known, no single entity has the resources to actually create the change that's needed. This comes from a body of work that's called collective impact. Stanford Social Innovation Review and a number of others have studied what do successful collaborations look like. And so again, we said, okay, how might we apply that evidence to the work that our community is doing? How can we use that as a framework to help us move forward? So what actually is it? What is collective impact? Well, the research has shown that there's 5 kind of components of what successful collaboration requires. common agenda, which is essentially a shared vision, shared measurement systems, so not every organization defining what good or great looks like, but actually everyone agreeing and saying these are the metrics by which we want to hold ourselves accountable. Mutually reinforcing activities. So not each one of us doing our things in isolation, but understanding how my work impacts your work and how we can reinforce and amplify each other. Continuous communication, so actually understanding what's going on and who's doing what and how to share the learnings from that. And lastly, backbone support organizations. So these are the ones that help make the connections and provide that continuous communication. We started yesterday with a common agenda. We were joined by Francis Karanja. You saw a little bit of that in the video this morning. And he shared what is the common agenda for education as defined by the Ministry of Education. A common agenda essentially is a shared vision for change, one that includes a common understanding of the problem and a joint approach to solving it through agreed upon actions. So again, the first piece of this was shared with us yesterday. Now again, we had a lot of conversations about, how can we best kind of make ourselves organized. You heard a call to action by Shiko that our work needs to be aligned with government priorities. That was echoed throughout the day to say we need to put government at the center. They're the ones who are reaching all of our 18 million learners in Kenya. And so our work is to figure out how do we map to that and how do we amplify that. So again, I want to bring us back to what was that vision that the ministry shared with us yesterday. We had this model that talked about how information and leadership builds into these 4 pillars: policy, capacity, content, and infrastructure. And these were the pieces that Mr. Karanja said form sort of the pillars of how ICT integration is happening in Kenya, as defined by the ministry. So we had those 4 pillars. Then he talked about the most recent evolution earlier this year. Again, if you're not aware, the Ministry of Education released a new, very evidence-based ICT and education and training policy that outlines 5 critical themes for moving this ecosystem forward and allowing us to do the work we need to do to reach each and every learner in Kenya. I'm not going to go through all of these, but if you missed this conversation yesterday, please do watch the videos afterwards so you can hear directly from Mr. Karanja. But what we did is we said, okay, well, so given those 2 pieces, what can this community do to make that a reality? So what are we really good at, the rest of us? We have a lot of innovators in this room. We celebrated some of those innovators yesterday. We had a breakfast this morning with innovators who are making products, doing amazing activities on the ground. And we said, well, one of the things we're really great at as a community is research and innovation. We can help generate the insights and come up with new ideas and solutions, ways to implement those ideas. And we can support implementation. We know that one of the biggest challenges with policy is actually bringing it to life. It's great to have it on paper, but it's a big challenge to make it a reality for 18 million children and youth in this country. That's a lot. And there's so many different types of young people, so many different types of teachers, pedagogical leaders, parents and caregivers, all of these people in our ecosystem. But collectively, we can do that implementation and we can generate evidence on what works. Okay, so we have some skills, and the ministry invited us to bring our skills to this conversation. So, how do we best organize ourselves, given how our community is structured, the way that we think about our work? How do we organize ourselves and help actually map to that vision that's been laid out? Well, we've taken a stab at this, and we want your feedback on it. We want to see, does this make sense? So we started and said, okay, we have the model of integration. We have these policy themes. Let's try and make sense of these in terms of sort of a joint approach. And again, how we might collectively map to this vision. So we said, we're gonna try and, you see there's some of the themes, some of the policy themes. You'll see, of course, the 4 pillars are here. And we said, okay, we're gonna try and put these together and make some sense of how we can easily map our work to this. And we came up with a couple of ideas. So the first is, we said, okay, if we think about content, well, content is really in service of building skills, right? And so we thought about this in 2 different ways. One being the foundational literacy and numeracy skills that we know are so important. This has been a big topic of conversation, not just in this room, but at a global level. At the Education World Forum this year and a number of the UN General Assembly, there has been a massive call for a focus on better foundational literacy and numeracy for young people. And we know from our own data here in Kenya that many of our learners are still struggling to read and do maths at grade level. They're not yet meeting expectations. So we called out one of these as a piece of the content. We also said, and we've even heard this morning from Ms. Mweni, about the importance of skills. Learners have the skills they need to solve the problems of the future and thrive in a digital workforce and society. This is basically CBC, or I would argue this is CBC in a nutshell. These are your 7 competencies. So we sort of said, okay, these are 2 different buckets, and we know that our community works on these a bit differently. So again, this is about how we organize ourselves. So we said, okay, let's think about those 2. Then, of course, you saw a theme around equity and access. We know that this is critically important to so many of us, to make sure the learners who are traditionally left behind are no longer. So we said, okay, how do we level the playing field and make learning inclusive and accessible for all? A really targeted focus on that inclusion. Capacity in learning institutions, this is about strengthening the ability of schools and communities to provide great learning. So we said, okay, it's not just, and I think we had in the town hall yesterday, a lovely debate around who actually do we invest in? Is it teachers? Is it parents? Is it CSOs or CASOs? Or who are the right people where we invest? And we know with limited resources, we have to make some choices, but also we have a massive ecosystem who can help. So let's think about how do we collectively strengthen the capacity of those closest to learners to lead that data-driven and inclusive digital learning. And the last piece is we said, okay, and you might disagree with this, and that's okay, but we said these are the 2 pieces, policy and infrastructure, that are the foundation for learning to happen. Without those 2 pieces in place, none of the rest of this is possible. So we put them into one bucket. And we said, as you heard again in the video from Mr. Karanja this morning, we need to call out the fact that we need sustainability, and we need things to be evidence-driven, and we need to focus on resilience. So we put those into a bucket around kind of building the foundation. So these are the sort of, again in the video from Mr. Karanja this morning, we need to call out the fact that we need sustainability, and we need things to be evidence-driven, and we need to focus on resilience. So we put those into a bucket around kind of building the foundation. So these are the sort of 5 elements of the joint approach that we'd like for you to help us figure out. And this is basically what the rest of the afternoon will look like. In our afternoon sessions, we're going to be kind of talking through each one of these. I've just given you, I think we can skip through the other ones because I've just given you a little bit of background on all of those, so we can go forward through these ones. In our how-to workshops, we're going to talk about first, before we get to the deconstruction of these, the reason we're going to pause and let these 5 goals or pillars or elements of approach, we've been calling them goals, why we want to let those simmer is because first we want to have these conversations around what does it really take to collaborate? Because it's great for us to say, make these lofty goals and say collaboration is possible if we just organize ourselves around common themes. But if we don't go into that with our eyes open around the realities of collaboration and the challenges that exist there, then we might take ourselves in the wrong direction. So we want to really use our first sessions today to help us understand how collaboration can actually work. So we'll have a number of sessions that actually build transparency into that process and build empathy. And again, you heard me say, nothing here today is about finger pointing or blame games. Instead, it's about how do we leverage every single actor within our ecosystem to make this vision possible. So we're going to challenge you to ask the questions and move beyond the problems to the actual solutions, to practice empathy and try to be curious about what the constraints are for your partners in this ecosystem, the members of your family who you need to work with to make this possible. In those goal-oriented design sessions in the afternoon, then you will bring your best thinking about those five pieces, the goals that I've introduced earlier, as well as your thinking from the how-to sessions, and we'll actually deconstruct whether those are the right goals, if they are the right goals, how would we as a community actually manifest those? And how can we create really this movement around evidence-based, technology-enabled teaching and learning? We have amazing brain power in this room to help create that vision. And so this is why we wanted to have this kind of conversation with all of you to say, how can we collectively marshal our potential to support this vision that was laid out earlier? So that's what the day is going to look like. We're going to keep it moving. We're not going to do questions or comments or anything like right now. This was just an opportunity for us to share some information with you, to create a space for discussion that should continue on from here. The rest of the day will be your opportunity to give feedback and react to this. So I'm going to turn it back over to Joy, I think, now to kind of talk to us about the rest of the day and to send us on our way for our break. Thanks.
To send you on your way for your break. Thank you so much, Jennifer. All right, we just sat down, and I can already tell people want to go for a break. But let me just quickly take us through the Slido, because it will help guide us into where we need to go, because I know it's tea time, but I kind of feel like we just sat down. So go to Slido, the scan code, or slido.com. And when you get to slido.com, you'll be able to see a code if you're interacting with Slido for the first time. That is, if today is your day 1 at day 2 of the EdTech Summit, you can go to slido.com and then enter the code, which is, I think, 152799.
In 2020, the MasterCard Foundation launched EdTech Mondays, a platform to mainstream discussion and crowd in action on using
Principal Secretary and the leadership of the ministry, led by the Cabinet Secretary, give you warm greetings. He challenged all of us to ideate, to innovate, and make our education system resilient and sustainable. and we welcome you into this sphere of EdTech. As an education sector, we feel honored that you can be able to organize yourself, and the reports that are coming from this consortium, we are able to see them and they are really challenging us, and we are going to continue working together. Allow me to challenge ourselves. We challenge ourselves, and I said, how can we go beyond chalk and talk?
How do we help our young learners get the right, improve their education outcomes and skills for the jobs of today and tomorrow? And how do we build our country based on that?
How do we remove some of the barriers to collaboration that exist in our community? And this group of wonderful people helped us think through how to make that conversation happen. The agenda you'll see for the next 2 days is a representation of that.
Right, so let's celebrate all of our innovators. Please, let's celebrate together our amazing Global Spotlight winners. Let's congratulate them. Thank you.